Hidden on the edge of Gifford Woods are the lonely ruins of Yester Castle. The remains of the castle are ancient, and the oldest part is called Goblin Ha. It's partly underground, and its name means Goblin Hall. According to legend, a wizard named Hugh de Gifford made a deal with the devil nearly 800 years ago, and in return an army of goblins swarmed up from hell and built Yester Castle for him. Goblin Ha is a part of the castle dating from that time, and that's how it got its name. It is said goblins lurk in the shadows of the ruins, and especially in Goblin Ha itself. At sunset, when night falls, they come out of their hiding places and crawl about in the darkness. To enter it, you have to find the small entrance, then go through a dark passageway into the hall. It was in this spooky chamber that Hugh, who was known as the Wizard of Yester, was said to have practiced his magic with the help of goblins. They came from hell up a dark stairway. The stairway is still there in a corner of Goblin Ha. It leads down into the ground. Many years ago, local people blocked the bottom of it with large stones and boulders to stop the goblins coming up. But has it worked? One autumn day, quite recently, a dad decided to take his 2 children on a trip to find the Yester Castle. He worked long hours during the week, so he tried to keep weekends for his children and make the time with them a special memory. His daughter was called Jennifer and had just turned 13, and his son Lewis was 10. Lewis was mad about Harry Potter and wizards, and when he discovered that not far from home there was a castle made by goblins for a wizard, he begged his dad to take him. "But what about the goblins?" asked his dad. "It'd be cool if we saw one," Lewis replied with a grin, not at all scared. "Very funny," said his big sister. "That's just a stupid story anyway." "Maybe so," said the dad, "but it's Lewis's turn to choose what to do this weekend. So Yester Castle it is." He did give Jennifer the choice to stay at home with her mum, but at the last minute she decided to come. It was bright and sunny when they set off. "A perfect day to explore a castle made by goblins," said the dad jokingly. They parked at the golf course and then walked towards the woods. "Maybe the goblins play golf," Jennifer joked to her wee brother. "You shouldn't make fun. They might hear you," he said. They walked past an overgrown pond next to a hill and finally reached the edge of the wood and peered into it. Jennifer found the bridge over the ravine that led the way to the ruins, but then Lewis ran ahead very excited, looking for goblins. It was difficult to imagine what the castle had originally looked like because it was so ruined. Lewis said it reminded him of the ancient ruined temple in the Jungle Book movie. But one thing was for sure, it definitely had an eerie atmosphere. As they explored, the dad walked under an archway and suddenly felt a shiver down his spine. He turned round and saw something move in the shadows. "What is it?" asked Jennifer. "A goblin," suggested Lewis excitedly. For a moment they stood absolutely still, staring into the shadow. Then a bird flew out, giving them a fright. The dad and Jennifer burst into laughter. "Ah, just a stupid bird," said Lewis, disappointed. They continued to explore and discovered 2 windows. Carefully they approached them and peered in. It took a while for their eyes to make sense of what they were seeing in the semi-darkness. It was a big, vaulted underground chamber. "That's it," said Jennifer. "That's Goblin Ha." "But how do we get in?" asked Lewis impatiently. After a careful search, they found the entrance. It was a small doorway leading to a low, dark passageway. Lewis led the way, with his sister and dad close behind. A cold and damp atmosphere hit them as soon as they entered the chamber. Although it was dark, the windows above gave just enough light to see. They were in Goblin Ha, where the Wizard of Yester practiced his magic and experimented with his potions and spells. The dad admired the wonderful design of the vaulted roof. "So all this was supposed to have been made by goblins?" asked Jennifer. "Yeah," said Lewis, who was still getting over the excitement that he was actually in Goblin Ha. "And they came from hell by a stairway. It must be here somewhere." He scanned the darkness looking for it and saw the top of a stairway in the corner. "And there it is!" he said excitedly. All 3 now stood peering into the dark stairway which plunged deep into the ground. According to the legend, this stairway was made by the devil after he had done a deal with the wizard, and it leads to hell. "But it's blocked up now," said Lewis. He looked at his father. "Can we go down, Dad, please?" he said, making a begging sign with his hands. "Seems a bit dangerous to me, son." "Oh, come on, Dad," said Jennifer. "We can't come all this way and then not go down the stairway to hell." "Very well, but I'll go first, and we'll use the torches on our phones," said the dad. Slowly they began to climb down the stairs, the dad leading the way. The light from their mobiles lit up the old walls and ancient worn steps as they descended. Jennifer took photos in the darkness, although the flash wasn't powerful enough to light up everything. Eventually they reached a point where great stones blocked the way, so they couldn't go any further. "They were put there to keep out the goblins," said Lewis. Jennifer was now feeling a bit uneasy. Can we go now, Dad? It's too spooky down here." "Scared of the goblins, are we?" her wee brother mocked. But the dad was spooked too. "Yes, let's go back up," he said. Lewis led the way, and soon they were back in Goblin Ha. "It's time we should be going. We've found the place, so mission accomplished. It'll be dark soon. Let's go now while there's still good daylight." And so they left the ruins and walked back across the golf course, laughing and talking. The walk took about 30 minutes, and they were at the car when Jennifer realised she didn't have her mobile. It was in my back pocket. It must have fallen out," she insisted. "Oh no, Jen, it could be anywhere," her dad said, annoyed. "Dad, we have to go back get it, please. We can retrace our steps exactly. I know I had it in Goblin Ha. It might have even fallen out there." The dad wasn't happy, but the mobile was expensive and had been a birthday present, and so he reluctantly agreed they would return to look for it. "You need to be more careful," he told her. Yeah, she replied. And so they retraced their steps all the way back to the castle. It had only been an hour since they had left the ruins, but that time had made a big difference in the atmosphere of the place. The sun was now almost below the horizon. There was still light, but it was fading fast. They walked with their heads down, looking for the lost mobile, but no luck. Finally, they reached the entrance to Goblin Ha. They hadn't found the phone, so they reckoned it must be in the chamber. But it was much darker than before. "You go first, Dad," said both children at the same time. And so the dad put on his torch and entered. The children followed close behind. When they emerged once again into Goblin Ha, the dad shone his torch on the ground, searching. "Where could you have left it?" he asked Jennifer. "Anywhere," she replied, shrugging her shoulders. They couldn't phone it as there was no reception, so they kept searching. It was Lewis who heard it first. A faint sound coming from the dark stairway. He lifted his head and looked in its direction, but it was too dark to see anything. There it was again. It sounded like breathing. Lewis froze in real terror. "Dad," he whispered. "Dad, there's something there." "Stop it, you wee bam," said his sister. "You're just trying to spook us." But then she heard it too. It was louder this time, a strange breathing sound with whispering. It was definitely coming from the stairway. "Shine your torch there, Dad," said Lewis, pointing to the top of the stairway. He stood in front of his children as if trying to protect them, and shone his torch. "Go closer. Shine it down the steps," urged Lewis. The dad walked closer and shone his light down into the darkness. The torch wasn't strong enough to completely penetrate the dark, but he screwed his eyes up to see if there was any sign of the mobile. Two red eyes suddenly stared back. "Ah!" The dad screamed, making his two children scream as well, and they ran for the exit. But it was dark, and they couldn't see the way. "Dad, for God's sake, shine it over here," cried Jennifer, now completely terrified. Whatever it was had come out of the stairway and was now moving about the ground by their feet. The dad shone the torch, and they made their way out through the passageway in a total panic. Once outside, there was still some faint light from the moon, and they stopped and caught their breath. "Why did you scream, Dad? You scared the hell out of me," Jennifer shouted angrily. "I'm sorry, Jen. It just gave me a fright. I didn't mean to scare you," he said. "What gave you a fright? What did you see, Dad?" asked Lewis, who was now scared himself, despite his earlier bravado. "Not sure, really. I thought I saw Yes? Yes, what?" asked Jennifer, stretching out her arms impatiently. The dad hesitated, then said, "Well, they look like eyes looking back at me." "I am now officially freaked out," said Jennifer. "Please, let's just get out of here. Never mind the sodden phone." I'm sure it was some kind of animal, maybe a fox or even an owl," said her dad, trying to reassure her. "But yes, it's too dark now. We should go back to the car, and maybe we can come back tomorrow in the light to look for your mobile." Lewis was suddenly distracted. He saw something in the passageway. Dad, whatever it is, it's coming after us. Look." The red eyes were in the passageway, moving towards them, almost at the entrance. Both Jennifer and Lewis were now in a state of complete panic, and they ran. No, it's dangerous. There's a steep fall here. Don't run," called out the dad. The kids stopped just in time. In the moonlight, they could see they were standing on the edge of a steep fall. Their dad caught up with them and took their hands. They walked together carefully with hearts racing through the trees towards the bridge that led to the golf course. Behind them, a dark shadow came out of the entrance and crawled into the wood. They were just past the arched wall when they saw the dark shadow move in front of them, blocking the way. The dad shone his torch directly at it, and for a split second, he saw it before it vanished into the darkness. He looked shocked. "What the heck was it?" shrieked Jennifer. "I honestly don't know," he said. Whatever it was still in the woods, moving in the darkness, making strange grunting noises. Then it came towards them again. Lewis suddenly yelled out, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in heaven as it is on earth." Suddenly, whatever it was moved away through the dark wood, back towards Goblin Ha. Lewis continued, "Give us this day our daily bread, and lead us not into temptation. For thine is the power and the glory for ever and ever. Amen." "Let's get out of here," said the dad. All three ran in the dim moonlight out of the shadows of the wood onto the golf course. They kept running until they reached the car park, legs aching and completely breathless. The dad fumbled for his keys. After a minute, he still hadn't found them. Lewis and Jennifer stared at the golf course. They saw a moving shadow in the moonlight. "Please, Dad, hurry up. It's coming." Finally, the dad found his keys, and they were in the car and away as fast as possible. As they drove through in the dark along the tree-lined road, the sound of scraping made the kids scream. "Calm down, guys. It's just tree branches," said the dad. The children fell into a silent relief as the dad drove. Jennifer was the first to speak. "I ask again, what the heck was that thing?" "I think the dark was playing tricks on us," said her dad. "It was probably an animal of some sort." "But what about that horrible laugh?" "Foxes can make a strange screeching noise at night, Jen. That's what I think it was," her dad said, trying to reassure her. "It was a goblin, wasn't it, Dad?" asked Lewis confidently. "Aye, right," replied Jennifer sarcastically. "You read too much Harry Potter. And what was with all that praying? That was just weird." "It was a red-cap goblin," said Lewis. "You can't outrun them, and the only thing that stops a red cap is the Lord's Prayer. So I memorised it before we came, just in case." "How do you know that?" asked Jennifer. "I read about it," said Lewis. Jennifer was just about to say something when the dad winked at her and interrupted. "Well, if it was a red cap, then the prayer seemed to work." He hoped this would stop them arguing, and it did. Lewis smiled and put on his earphones. "I'm sure it was a fox," whispered the dad to Jennifer. "Or maybe a big rat. But just let Lewis think it was a goblin." They got home safely with a story to tell their mum. The next day, the dad ordered a new phone for Jennifer. He had decided they shouldn't go back to Yester Castle to look for it. He said it was because he had no time. But Lewis was convinced he'd had a close shave with a deadly red-cap goblin. They guard ruined castles and got their name because they dipped their caps in the blood of their victims. Goblin Ha is not called Goblin Ha for nothing, he said to his mum after telling her the story of what happened. Later that day, the dad came in from cleaning the car, looking very worried. "What's the matter?" asked his wife. He hesitated to answer, as if he wouldn't be believed. "It was a goblin," he said. "I didn't believe my eyes, but that's what I saw. It was terrifying, its cap dripping with blood. I have never been so scared in all my life." He hesitated, looked out of the window to the drive, then looked at his wife with a sigh. I now think it may have been in the car with us. I've just found claw marks in the boot. His wife turned pale. Do you think it could be in the house? I don't know, he said.